crazy weekend. I tell you, it's only the fifth day of the new year, and already a year's worth of things has happened. In the wee hours of Saturday, Donald Trump sent the U.S. military into Caracas, the capital city of Venezuela, a very fortified city in a fortified presidential palace where Nicolas Maduro, the dictator of Venezuela, was heavily guarded, including by dozens, actually, of Cuban shock troops. Just stop for a second on that. Why would a Venezuelan dictator have foreign bodyguards? And I mean dozens of them. Cuba later said that 32 of their bodyguards were killed. No American losses. I can think of two reasons. First of all, Maduro is so hated by his own Venezuelan people that he doesn't trust anyone. And second of all, you can look at those men as bodyguards. You can also think of them as a sort of prison guard. They're not just there to protect Maduro. They're there to ensure that Maduro does what Cuba wants it to do. In fact, I saw a lot of Venezuelans over the last few days saying that Venezuela is not being colonized by America. It has been colonized by Cuba, by Russia, by China, even by Iran and Hezbollah. That's that weird quirk of having an all-foreign personal staff, isn't it? Anyways, they went in the wee hours, a grand total of 2 hours on the ground. They extracted Nicolas Maduro and his wife and took him back to the United States. He's, in fact, in New York right now, not as a political or a military move, but in service of an indictment. He was indicted, as was his wife, as the head of a major drug cartel. It's just an absolutely stunning thing. The rest of the country remains unmolested, I should say, that the Americans, as they went in, blew up certain military establishments, and they did. I guess they couldn't help themselves. They blew up the mausoleum for Hugo Chavez, Maduro's dictator predecessor, but they didn't invade the country. There's no Americans there now. They were in and out in 2 hours. They went to arrest a man. Now, that's shocking to us because of the concept of sovereign immunity. We don't just go around arresting foreign leaders, but in this case, two things. He is an indicted criminal in a variety of very serious criminal charges, and he is not, in fact, the legitimate leader of Venezuela. He is a narco-terrorist who refused to abide by the election in that country. He is sitting in someone else's throne. Just an absolutely amazing weekend. And there's one more detail I've got to share with you. Mere minutes before Maduro was seized by the Americans, he was welcoming a large Chinese delegation. China, along with Iran, had sold a lot of military equipment to Maduro, and China was putting deeper ties there. They were financing things. China really is the world's largest colonizer now. They've taken over half of Africa, and that's what their designs were in Venezuela. So when I say the Monroe Doctrine is back, that's exactly what it is. The Monroe Doctrine, about 2 centuries old, is an American doctrine that no large foreign powers get to put a toehold in the Americas. I mean, this was violated by the Soviets during the Cuban Missile Crisis. But since, I suppose, the last 10 or 20 years, it's just gone nuts with Cuba being supported by the Soviets and then Cuba supporting communists in South America. Donald Trump is saying, get out. He's saying this is our hemisphere, and he's doing it in that Donald Trump way. He's saying it's not the Monroe document, it's the Donroe Doctrine now, which is sort of fun to see. I find it terrifying and impressive and exhilarating how powerful and precise the U.S. military is. I say that about the Israeli military sometimes, and it's certainly true even more so about the American military. Imagine going in, 150 aircraft, all perfectly timed, completely evading any defensive measures by the Chinese and Russian and Iranian equipment on the ground, managing to kill 32 Cuban bodyguards without taking a single casualty, and snatching him out. It's almost impossible. It reminds me in audacity of when Israel blew up all those Hezbollah terrorists with those pagers. Donald Trump and Marco Rubio, the son of Cuban emigres himself, who used to be the senator for Florida, is now an outstanding Secretary of State for Trump. They're taking an interesting line. Like I say, they went in saying this is an arrest, and they indeed are bringing the Maduros to a court in New York. They're not putting him in a prisoner of war camp. They're not killing him. They're prosecuting him like they would a drug kingpin. And interestingly, Trump and Rubio have not called for the winner of the last election, including the Nobel Peace Prize winner last year, to be installed as the leader. They've said they don't have the strength and the respect to do so. They're actually working with the remains of Maduro's government, basically saying they want peaceful regime change. I'm sure an election is part of their plans, but for now, it's American interest. Donald Trump gave a lengthy elocution over the weekend saying that U.S. interests will come first, and that includes oil, but also improved civil liberties will come. Here's just an excerpt of Trump talking about some of his ideas for the future in Venezuela.
We are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. And it has to be judicious because that's what we're all about. We want peace, liberty, and justice for the great people of Venezuela, and that includes many from Venezuela that are now living in the United States and want to go back to their country. It's their homeland. We can't take a chance that somebody else takes over Venezuela that doesn't have the good of the Venezuelan people in mind. We've had decades of that. We're not going to let that happen. We're there now, and what people don't understand, but they understand as I say this, we're there now, but we're going to stay until such time as the proper transition can take place. So we're going to stay until such time as we're going to run it, essentially, until such time as a proper transition can take place. As everyone knows, the oil business in Venezuela has been a bust, a total bust, for a long period of time. They were pumping almost nothing by comparison to what they could have been pumping and what could have taken place. We're going to have our very large United States oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure, and start making money for the country.
So he's not arresting them all. You'll recall that when the United States went into Iraq, they had playing cards, 52 playing cards with a picture of a terror leader on each one. And of course, Saddam Hussein was the ace of spades. They're not doing that in Venezuela. They're not arresting the entire cabinet. They're not arresting the head of secret police or the military. They're saying to them, you work for me now. I've never seen it before. I don't know if it can work. I think they've all been stunned by the removal of their totalitarian leader, and perhaps they don't know quite what to do. But one thing they do know for sure is America can do whatever it wants, and they just can't hide. I think the whole world was riveted to the situation. A lot of people on Twitter, which I think is the go-to social media platform for breaking events like this, a lot of what I call monitoring the situation. I mean, that's what I call it when I just sit there looking at Twitter for hours. Oh no, I can't take out the garbage right now. I'm monitoring the situation. It's a funny thing to say, but Zoran Mamdani, the communist mayor of New York, who's only been in office for a few days himself, he issued a statement how this was an illegal and unconscionable act by the president of the United States. But he's impotent. I mean, he's the mayor of a city, and good for him. But he is not involved with the foreign policy of the United States. And it's a bit rich for him to condemn the United States arresting an indicted narco-terrorist and objecting to that when he himself has said he would arrest Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu if he could. The European Union was particularly pitiful. They're monitoring the situation. They weren't consulted. They weren't asked for their opinion, let alone their permission. Keir Starmer, I think, is the lamest. He's the Prime Minister of the UK. He put out a statement saying, just so everyone knows, we weren't involved. That was his way of saying, don't blame me. I don't think anyone in the world thought that Keir Starmer was involved, but he lacked the courage to either approve of or condemn Trump's actions, saying he wanted to monitor the situation a bit more. Here's a video clip of him doing that.
Donald Trump about what's happened in Venezuela?
No, I haven't, and it's obviously a fast-moving situation.
and we need to establish all the facts. What I can say is that the UK was not involved in any way in this operation. And as you'd expect, we're focusing on British nationals in Venezuela and working very closely with our embassy. And so I will want to talk to the president, I will want to talk to allies, but at the moment, I think we need to establish the facts. I think President Trump is doing a press conference later, so hopefully more information will come out then.
What is clear, though, which the White House has said, is that America carried out strikes on Venezuela and captured their leader, Maduro. Some politicians in this country have already condemned that. Do you?
Well, I want to establish the facts first. I want to speak to President Trump. I want to speak to allies. As I say, I can be absolutely clear that we were not involved in that. And as you know, I always say and believe we should all uphold international law. But I think at this stage, fast-moving situation, let's establish the facts and take it from there.
I mean, look, just pick a side and own it. Saying, oh, I wasn't part of it, but I don't know if I support it and I'm going to wait for more information. What a weak man. Of course, his military is otherwise occupied. Not so much the military, but the police hunting down mean tweets and comments on Facebook. So, yeah, I don't know if they would do anything as dazzling as what the Americans did. One of the things you're hearing from everyone, from the Europeans to Zoran Mamdani to Canada, Mark Carney made a passive-aggressive tweet saying he wants all parties to respect international law. Well, of course, that's got nothing to do with Venezuela. Venezuela's just sitting there. It's obviously a passive-aggressive criticism of Donald Trump saying, hey, stop doing this, man. It's even more pitiful than Keir Starmer's. So what is this international law? And who is this international policeman? And who is the international judge overseeing it? The answer is there's no such thing. The answer is not the United Nations. Who's their police force? They don't have a military of their own. The only reason that Canadian law and Canadian police and Canadian judges work is that they have a monopoly of violence in society. And if you don't go along when police arrest you, they'll, I guess, theoretically shoot you. You will be sent to a prison by the judge using the law, but there is no such analogy in the world of international affairs. It's just strength and interests, and I suppose some international treaties keep different countries in line, and countries can all sign a UN document, but like I say, that's just a piece of paper. International law didn't save Ukraine from a Russian invasion. It didn't save Tibet from a Chinese invasion. International law is words, and what we saw over the weekend was military hardware and highly trained soldiers. That is the ultimate law in international relations, and that may be hard to take, but that's how it is. By the way, until Donald Trump became president again, most of the world agreed that Maduro was a criminal, not a sovereign leader of Venezuela. In fact, a number of Democrats, you can dig up their old tweets, they're chiding Trump for not being tougher on Maduro. Even Joe Biden, even the Democrats acknowledge that he stole the last election. The full European Union position is he stole the election. Just his close allies, China, Russia, Iran, think he's legit. That just flipped now that Trump took him out. I saw CTV actually called him a sovereign leader. That's the kind of talk that Zoran Mamdani would have. Now, some people say, and I see this from journalists and I see this from politicians and pundits, some people are saying, well, Trump's unilateral action without going to the UN and without being polite, well, this is now a license to the bad guys in the world to do this same sort of unilateral thing where might makes right. Suddenly Russia and China are gonna have no compunction about invading their enemies or snatching their dictators or their leaders. Yeah, they've been doing that for a while now, with or without this international law. Literally right now, China is having exercises, or military exercises around the island of Taiwan, sort of practicing for invading that country. They didn't wait for a rules-based international order and a motion at the United Nations. If and when, God forbid, China takes Taiwan, it will be a military invasion. It will not be through resolutions at the United Nations. Same thing with Russia. Russia has invaded Ukraine twice now in the last decade, and it's both times where they felt strong and thought the Americans were weak. They didn't wait for some international law group to tell them to do it. Only the West feels bound by these notions of international law and a rules-based international order, which is a very Canadian way of saying, hey, Americans, don't do things without our permission and consent. There's also some colonizing talk going on. America going back in to take the oil, and Trump did very much say that. But yeah, the bad guys have already been colonizing Venezuela. I mentioned before that the Cubans basically run the joint politically and militarily, and in return for that, they get 50,000 barrels of oil a day from Venezuela. Trump's cutting that off, which means Cuba is going to be in trouble pretty soon. Venezuela is important in the region. It funds Cuba through subsidized oil. Trump is seizing those oil ships. That's going to put a lot of pressure on Cuba. Venezuela is the doorway for the defeat of the Monroe Doctrine. You bet that Trump's going to cut that off. And I have to say, Marco Rubio has done a great job elocuting, articulating, explaining what America is doing and the thesis for it. And he's not saying words like international law. He's using other words like what's in the American interest or we have to protect ourselves. Those are concepts that Canadians have forgotten about. We have a luxury foreign policy based on press statements and feelings. We don't actually do things. Maybe we try and negotiate some trade deals, but on the hard stuff, on the military stuff, Canada's not there. We were completely absent in the Middle East and in Israel. I mean, first of all, Israel would not permit us to be part of a process. We've basically said Palestine should emerge from Israel unilaterally without disarming, without acknowledging Israel's place in the world. Like, it's shocking how out of the norm Canada's foreign policy is. But even if we weren't pro-Palestine crazy, I don't think there's any Canadian peacekeepers deployed anywhere in the world right now. I'd have to check for sure. There's a few Canadian troops in the Baltics with a larger NATO force, but I don't think there's any Canadian peacekeepers in the world. There's only so much diplomatic power you can have by just putting out tweets and press releases. Canada is not part of real foreign affairs anymore. All we're good for is putting out tweets that terrorist groups seem to like. Marco Rubio explained it pretty well. Here's some clips of him. He was doing the rounds of TV yesterday. I thought he was so articulate.
It's running policy. The policy with regards to this. We want Venezuela to move in a certain direction because not only do we think it's good for the people of Venezuela, it's in our national interest. It either touches on something that's a threat to our national security or touches on something that's either beneficial or harmful.
And are you involved in that transition,
so obviously
Secretary?
I'm very involved in this. Well, of course. I mean, I think everyone knows I'm pretty involved on politics in this hemisphere. Obviously, as Secretary of State and National Security Advisor, very involved in all these elements. The Department of War plays a very important role here, along with the Department of Justice, for example, because they're the ones that have to go to court. So this is a team effort by the entire national security apparatus of our country, but it is running this policy. And the goal of the policy is to see changes in Venezuela that are beneficial to the United States, first and foremost, because that's who we work for, but also, we believe, beneficial for the people of Venezuela who have suffered tremendously. We want a better future for Venezuela, and we think a better future for the people of Venezuela also is stabilizing for the region and makes the neighborhood we live in a much better and safer place. Ultimately, legitimacy for their system of government will come about through a period of transition and real elections, which they have not had. And by the way, it's the reason why Maduro is not just an indicted drug trafficker. He's illegitimate president. He was not the head of state. And I continue to see these media reports referring to him as President Maduro and the head of state. He was not the head of state. He was not the head. And it's not just us saying it. The Biden administration said it. And so did 60-something countries around the world hold that position.
If the purpose of the operation was to capture Maduro and bring him to justice, why does the United States need to take over the Venezuelan oil industry?
Well, we don't need to. First of all, let me go back up. We don't need Venezuela's oil. We have plenty of oil in the United States. What we're not going to allow is for the oil industry in Venezuela to be controlled by adversaries of the United States. You have to understand, why does China need their oil? Why does Russia need their oil? Why does Iran need their oil? They're not even in this continent. This is the Western Hemisphere. This is where we live. And we're not going to allow the Western Hemisphere to be a base of operation for adversaries, competitors, and rivals of the United States.
Have specific oil companies?
We also want to see that oil and the proceeds from it Hold on. We want to see the oil proceeds of that country benefit the people of Venezuela. Why have 8 million people left Venezuela? 8 million, the single largest mass migration probably in modern history, left Venezuela in 2014 because all the wealth of that country was stolen to the benefit of Maduro and his cronies in the regime, but not to the benefit of people of Venezuela. You know how destabilizing 8 million migrants is? The number one fear that Brazil has, that Colombia has, that all these countries in the region have about what's happening in Venezuela and our involvement is they're afraid of another mass migration event. That's what they fear. This is deeply destabilizing stuff. It's not going to continue to happen. They are not going to come from outside of our hemisphere, destabilize our region in our own backyard, and us have to pay the price for it. Not under President Trump.
Trump is feeling pretty good about things, obviously. In fact, on his Air Force One the other day, just yesterday, in fact, he was actually been giving amazing comments all weekend, including today. He has said that even Colombia had better watch it. Other countries that sell drugs into America had better watch it. Their time might come too. That's quite a thing to say. Here, listen to him say it.
Colombia is very sick too, run by a sick man who likes making cocaine and selling it to the United States, and he's not going to be doing it very long, let me tell you.
What does that mean? He's not going to be doing it very long.
He's not doing it very long. He has cocaine mills and cocaine factories. He's not going to be doing it very long.
So there will be an operation by the U.S. and
It sounds good to me.
Mr. President, Colombian President Gustavo Petro, a couple weeks ago, he said he's got to watch his ass. And today he said he's not concerned about anything happening to him in the aftermath of this operation. So just what your message is about that. Well, he has cocaine mills. He has factories where he makes cocaine. And, yeah, I think I stick by my first statement. He's making cocaine. They're sending it into the United States. So he does have to watch his ass.
You know, Donald Trump has been president for just under a year. Remember, he was sworn in January, I think it was January 20th or 21st, 2025. So it hasn't even been a year. It's just over 11 months. In those 11 months, the U.S. military has not dramatically increased in size. It has not acquired dramatic new weapons in the last 11 months. Its recruitment numbers are up, it's true, but that has not significantly changed the U.S. military. What has changed is how that military is wielded. Under Joe Biden, who had all these gadgets and gizmos, who had the most powerful military in the world, the symbol of how he expressed America's force around the world was the helter-skelter abandonment of Afghanistan, where you saw people literally trying to cling on to the outside of the airplanes as they scrambled out of the country. It was like the last helicopter out of Vietnam. Joe Biden was terrified of anyone and anything. And most importantly, he was terrified of using American power. He was on apology tours like Barack Obama. He basically telegraphed to the world's enemies they could do whatever they wanted. That is why Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine. Donald Trump is using the same military with the same people and the same equipment, but now it's with a purpose and a focus. Biden could have done what Trump just did, but he lacked any will to do so. It was against his ideology. There's sort of an anti-Americanism in the Democrats. The word credibility is what comes to mind. Donald Trump is so credible right now. When he says he'll do something, are you going to gamble that he won't? When he says he could or would or should do something, you're a foreign leader. You should take it seriously. The other day, Donald Trump warned the Ayatollahs in Iran they better not shoot their own people protesting. Well, they are shooting their own people protesting. After what you saw Trump's military accomplish the other day, would you roll those dice? And it all comes down to credibility. That's from the Latin word for believing. People believe Trump when he says he's going to stand up for America. And if you don't believe it, well, I'll tell you one thing Nicolas Maduro did. I read in the newspapers today that one of the things that finally tipped Donald Trump over, he's been, of course, sparring verbally with Maduro for weeks now. He's had the flotilla, the Armada, off the coast of Venezuela. He's been talking on the phone with Maduro. And Maduro started to dance, to sing and dance as if to say to America, I'm carefree, you're a joke, I'm stress-free, you're not serious, I don't believe you. They say that Trump's staff allegedly told the media, that's reported that they told the media, that it was this video of Maduro dancing like an idiot that made Trump pull the trigger. Take a look. Why would that be? Well, because Donald Trump is using harsh words and Maduro just wasn't listening. He wasn't believing Trump because America had no credibility after 4 years of Biden. Do you believe him now? Do the Ayatollahs believe him now? Do the Cuban communists believe him now? Well, they should. No one believed Biden. Everyone believes Trump.